In today's video, you'll learn how to edit that corporate interview video that you shot on your phone. I'll show you the 5 key editing steps, no matter what editing software you're using, to turn your footage from this
So behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior.
to this.
So behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior.
Let's take it to the next level. Hi everyone, I'm Carl. Welcome to Next Level Video Marketing, a channel where you get the latest strategies and tips to help you achieve your marketing and business goals through video. Now remember, if this is your first time on the channel and you want to get the latest strategies to help you maximize the impact of your marketing videos, hit the subscription button below, hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. So this is part 2 of our 3-part series where I teach you how to shoot, edit, and promote a high quality interview video just using your phone. So in the previous video, we went over how to shoot an interview, and today we're gonna learn how to edit quickly. Professional level video projects usually take me days, weeks, sometimes months to complete. But because this is a simple interview, I'll show you the 5 key steps that I use to get you editing quickly and get this video interview published. So I'm gonna show you these 5 steps in Final Cut Pro, but you can use them in any editing software you prefer, whether it's DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere, iMovie, Camtasia, or whatever else you plan to use. So the 5 steps are first cuts and sequencing, adding B-roll, sound design, color grading, and micro video cuts. Let's start with the first one. So for this part, what you're looking to do is cutting out any of those unnecessary elements you don't want to include in your final interview, such as questions that you've asked, pauses, ums from people. In addition, you want to put in order the key messages from the interview. You may want some key messages that were at the end of the interview and move them forward. Make sure that the sequencing for your interview is set before you move on to the different sections. So I'm in Final Cut Pro. As you can see, I'm just gonna scrub through this interview. Now it's a sample clip from the interview that I did with the subject. And it's not very long, but it will give you a good example what to look for. So as you can see here, this is where I first asked the question.
Tell me about behavior.
So obviously I want to remove this entire first part. And this is where she started her answer.
So behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior.
So that's the first segment that actually works. And then this next segment, I'll probably want to cut out.
An example is
Before I do, I want to actually show you something where this is why I like using Final Cut. If I go up to here and I go up to angles, so remember, I use 2 phones to record this interview, and this is a perfect opportunity to switch to that other perspective. Why do we actually have 2 perspectives? Well, it helps make the interview a little bit more dynamic, and it also helps hide any of the cuts that I'm making. So here's an example. So let's say we want to remove this little piece where she starts thinking about her answer. So I'm gonna remove that piece right here. So that's the piece I want to remove. But as you can see, it's a pretty hard cut. What I'm gonna do is actually switch perspectives right here.
done. An example is tell me about a project you led, or tell me about.
And then what I can do is I can switch perspectives at any time. So let's look at that again.
However, after that, they'll start asking questions to find out about things you've actually done. An example is tell me about a project you led, or tell me about anything you've done.
As you can see, the cuts are much more easier than if it was a straight hard cut and going on to the exact same scene. So what I'm doing here is called a multicam edit, where I can switch perspectives pretty much at will, but keeping the same audio, because the other phone was picking up the audio as well, but I want the audio from the lav mic. Now I'm gonna leave a link to a video in the description below that breaks down how to do a multicam edit and put it all into Final Cut. So what I'm gonna do is finish editing this clip, and then here's the final result.
So behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior. So in a behavioral interview, they'll often ask a lot of introductory questions. However, after that, they'll start asking questions to find out about things you've actually done. An example is tell me about a project you led, or tell me about anything you've done. The idea being that if you've demonstrated that behavior in the past, you'll do that again in the future. Nothing's 100% accurate, but the evidence shows that this is a more accurate predictor of what a person will actually do in the job than questions like, scenarios. Not to say that those don't have a place in interviews, but in predicting how an employee is going to behave on the job, the most accurate predictor of that is what they've done before. Determine what the competencies of the job, so those skills and behaviors that the person is going to exhibit in the job on a regular basis. You pick the most important ones, and then you design questions around the most important competencies in a job, and look for those behaviors.
So now that we've done our first pass and the interview is generally in the order that we want it to be in, the second step, and this is optional, is to add some B-roll. So B-roll is any additional clips that is not the interview. So your A-roll is the interview. Your B-roll could be stock footage or footage that you've shot. B-roll is used to accentuate certain points or messages. It can be also used to hide cuts in addition to, so let's say for example, you didn't use multicam edits. Wherever you made a cut, you can add a B-roll, and it's not the same person talking over and over. There's some visual breaks to it. With this interview, I didn't shoot any B-roll, but what I like to do sometimes is add some stock videos. And this is where I go to story blocks. So in story blocks, we can do a search for various stock video footage. And in this case, when our subject was talking about behavioral interviews, let's say we wanted to do stock footage on an interview. So we search interview, and from there we can add it to the clip itself. So when I look here, probably a good interview one would probably be this one, because we're talking about behavioral interviews. So this looks like a potential job interview. So I'm just going to download this. So a great place to probably put this is when she says,
so in a behavioral interview, they'll often ask a lot of introductory questions.
So I think I might put it right here. Take a little bit of clip from this. So let's see how it looks.
It's future behavior. So in a behavioral interview, they'll often ask a lot of introductory questions. However, after that, they'll start asking questions.
And we can scrub through our entire interview and see if there's any additional places where we want to add some B-roll as well. So once you have your B-roll in place, the next step, and I believe the most important of all these 5 steps, is sound design. Now we can spend hours on this, but I'm going to show you how I do my sound design. So the easiest way to do sound design, if you don't want the hassle of doing it at all, which I don't recommend, but if you're pressed for time, you really need this out, just make sure that the audio from your interview is between 6 to 12 decibels. And let's see this clip.
Premise that past behavior predicts future behavior. So in a behavioral interview, they'll often ask a lot.
You probably need to raise the volume a little bit more. So what I can do is I can definitely use the volume and raise decibels until it reaches between 6 to 12 dBs.
It's based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior.
So if you need to get this out and that's what you need to do, that's probably the easiest way. So I'm going to show you in Final Cut how I do sound design. It's well worth it because you're going to have a more rich, robust sound, leading to a much better sounding interview than if you just raise or lower the volumes. So the first thing I do is add channel EQ, and this allows me to put a high and low pass filter. So I'm going to pass a low pass filter here. So I usually go anywhere between 50 to 100, and then a high pass filter anywhere probably up to around 10K there. And why I put these is I want to get rid of any of the noise that is outside the range of our subject. So any hums or any extra noises that is beyond the voice, this will help get rid of it. But the second piece, what I like to do is to raise the volume just a little bit, between 100 to 200 decibels, and provides a little bit more rich sounding audio to our subject. And also, in fact, what I can do here is raise the high frequency just a little bit. The next step is I add the compressor. Now what the compressor does, it helps level the audio so there isn't huge drops and peaks and valleys, I guess, of your audio. So as you can see, when I add If you remove or put in the compressor, it immediately moves to level the audio of this clip. And what I like to do here is to dial in the compressor a little further. So I want to listen to where the audio is in terms of dBs. By that little clip itself,
Is based on the premise that past behavior.
so it's anywhere between 6 to 12, which is great. So I'm going to probably take the lowest, which is -12, add an additional 6. So it's about 18. So I'll probably put 18 and a half. And so it'll start, the compressor will start kicking in for anything over 18. And then we're going to put the ratio anywhere between 1.4 to 4. So I'm probably going to leave it at the high range, 2.8. The release, I usually put anywhere between 10 to 20, and the attack 0 to 5. I'll leave a link in the description below on the explanations of why we use these in terms of ratios. There's a lot that goes again into understanding how we dial in the compressor. If you use these settings, pretty much what you're looking for here is to make sure that your audio is anywhere between 0 and -5 on the meter. So what we'll need to do is we need to add actually a limiter now. So what the limiter does, it helps level your audio more and helps boost your audio without clipping it. So we'll put this into legacy mode. We'll put the look ahead to about 4 milliseconds. And we'll put the release to about 10. And what we want to do is want to make sure that it kicks in. So let's say
Interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior. So in a behavioral interview, they're often asked.
So we're looking at here is the dB, is it kicking in to about 3. So we're
Premise that past behavior predicts.
that's about right. Now the only problem we have is if you look at our total audio volume,
Past behavior predicts future behavior.
it's not bad, but I think what we'll want to do is decrease the output just a little bit more. So 4, let's see, we'll try it again.
Interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior.
Okay, so it looks like we're good to go. So here's a clip without the effects.
So behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior.
And here's the clip with the effects.
So behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior.
So as you hear, the subject's voice is a little bit more rich and it's definitely a lot more level. One thing I forgot to mention was at the very beginning, in terms of pan mode, I usually like to select dialogue, and this just further enhances the voice and removes any other ambient sound. Now what I'll do is I'll leave another link in the description with a couple of videos going over how to do proper sound design, because I gave you a very, very quick overview of what I do. I actually do quite a lot more, but this just gives you some pointers on how to get the most from your audio. And then I would highly recommend, if you want to take your sound design to the next level, watch those videos and implement some of the techniques found in there. So once you're happy with the sound, what you can do is just copy all the edits that you did in this clip to all the remaining clips. So what you can do here, Command C, and then select all these other ones, Shift Command V. I want to add all the edits I did here, and they're applied. Pretty simple. The next step is color grading. Now this could be optional. Well, I'm using an iPhone, and the iPhone's colors are pretty decent, and I think most of the phones in their native settings provide pretty decent colors. So you can completely skip this part, but I'm just gonna show you quickly what I look for when I'm color grading. So the first thing I'll do is I will bring up my vector scopes. The key things I look at are the vector scope, the RGB overlay in waveform, actually no, in parade, because I want to see the colors and make sure that they're balanced. And then the final step is the overlay. So the first thing is exposure. I just want to make sure that the clip itself is exposed properly. So it's anywhere between, the lowest point does not go past 0 or 100. 100 is the highlights, 0 is the shadows. I don't want to go anything above or below that. Now I use a tool called Color Finale Pro, but if you're going to be editing in Final Cut or iMovie, we're just going to use the native setting here. So I'm going to add a color wheel. And if I wanted to, as you can see here, if I want to decrease the shadows, I can bring that down a little bit more or raise it up. And if I wanted to raise the highlights, I can go past or below. What I want to do here is avoid any of the clipping of my highlights or crushing my shadows. And as you can see, this is pretty well lit. What I would do is I'll probably want to, again, isolate the subject a little bit more so I can see it's generally properly exposed. The key thing that I'm looking for though is skin tone, and this is where this piece is, the vector scope is very important. And here's the skin tone line. What I want to do is I want to isolate for our subject's skin tone, which is right here. So that's all her skin tone. And what you want to make sure is that the colors are directly on that line. So I'm going to use the midtones wheel and just shift that over just to make sure that it's correctly on that line. So reset that. It's a little too saturated. And then here, when we apply the color wheel, it matches a little bit more. So that's what I'm going to do. So as you can see here, a little overexposed. So I'm going to use the color mask where I'm going to isolate for the skin of my subject. I'm going to look at the mask and I'm going to play around with it to get rid of some of the, so just isolate her skin for the mask. That's pretty decent, I think. So we'll view the mask. And what I like to do with the face, for the inside, I'm going to raise the saturation just a little bit and put it a little bit more orange, just a little bit, a hint of it. And I'm going to raise the exposure on the highlights just a tad. And then outside, I'm actually going to decrease the saturation just a little bit. I want to go to the overall midtones. I'm going to actually add another color wheels here. And I'm going to decrease the exposure on the midtones to give it a bit more contrast. So let's see here. A little bit more contrast. And I also want to bring up the color curves here. I'm going to put a little bit of an S curve to get a little bit of a cinematic look. And then what I'm going to do is go to hue saturation, the curves, and I'm going to go to this hue versus saturation. I'm going to isolate for the tree because I think it's a little too bright. I'm going to bring the saturation of that tree just a little bit down. And then same thing, I want to decrease the saturation here a bit. And the last piece that I like to do with this clip is to put a little bit of vignette. So that was too much, but if I darken it just a little bit more, I can get the separation between the subject and the background. Let's take a look at the effects.
Based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior.
It's more of an artistic look that I'm looking for, and I kind of like that kind of look. And I just, again, the two big things for me are skin tone to make sure that it's on the skin tone line, and then we want to separate our subject from everything else. So I'm probably going to do some additional color grading to this clip as well. Again, separate our subject from the rest, from the background, and then apply it to the rest of the clips. So once I've finished the color grading, here's what the final video looks like.
So behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior. So in a behavioral interview, they'll often ask a lot of introductory questions. However, after that, they'll start asking questions to find out about things you've actually done. An example is tell me about a project you led, or tell me about something, anything you've done. The idea being that if you've demonstrated that behavior in the past, you'll do that again in the future.
So the next step is to create micro videos from your entire interview. Now it depends on how long your interview is, but I would pick maybe 2 to 3 highlights, anywhere between 1 to 2 minutes from the entire interview. So 2 to 3, 1 to 2 minute segments, key highlights of key messages that you want to convey. And what you'll want to do is cut those out. So in Final Cut, what I like to do is I like to create a new project called Social Cut, where I would take that 1 to 2 minute highlight and create a brand new video clip that then I can use for Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, social ads, for my website, emails, anywhere between 2 minutes, 1 minute, even 30-second versions. It's really up to you to find out the key highlights in your interview, and you can use those to run ads, and post organically on your social channels. So let's recap these 5 steps, and remember you can use them with any video editing software you're using. First step is scrubbing your footage to make a coherent sequence and making sure that the key points are in order. The second step is adding any B-roll, whether ones that you've shot or stock footage. Third step is sound design, making sure your audio is high quality. The fourth step is color grading your footage. And finally, you want to create micro videos to promote on different social channels. Now that you've shot and edited your interview, the next step is to make sure it reaches your intended audience and they watch it. So watch this video here as I show you how to promote, syndicate, and distribute your video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in our next episode.